it is time to talk about the literary RPG. Hello everyone, welcome back to A Fictional Escapist. My name is Kris, and today's video is all about the literary RPG. What is it? Why is it important? And what are the books on my LitRPG TBR? Before we jump into the video though, make sure you're checking that description box down below for links to my Discord and social media, should you want to come along for the ride. Jumping into this video, this is one that I have planned to make for a little while now. It's a sort of a deeper look at what a lit RPG is and where it fits inside the SFF sphere. First of all, we're going to have a bit of a discussion about what the genre actually is and what makes a book a literary RPG, and I'll talk to you about 10 different series that I have on my radar within this subgenre of fantasy and sci-fi. A literary RPG is what happens when book form and video games mesh and have a baby. It basically is a book that will incorporate traditional RPG elements that one would normally see in a video game. There are a number of arguments as to what can and what cannot be considered within the literary RPG genre, and even more arguments as to what subgenre the literary RPG belongs to. Some say it could be a category all on its own. Personally, I think it fits pretty well into the fantasy sphere of the internet, and sometimes even in sci-fi, depending on what you're reading. For a book to be considered a literary RPG, it must have some form of game mechanic incorporated into the storyline. For example, a lot of stories in the sci-fi sphere will take place in a virtual world, making it a literary RPG, a world that is completely virtual within another world separate to the one they're playing or the one that the story is set in. Essentially, the reader is reading an RPG being played out on the page rather than on screen. Other elements which could be included in a literary RPG are things like a level up system. For example, in Will White's Cradle series, you have a progression leveling up system. This series could be considered a literary RPG because of that element. These level up systems are most often seen in progression fantasy and sci-fi. Like I said, we've got Cradle series, and we also have Titan Hoppers that recently came out from Rob J. Hayes, and things of that nature. Things where your main protagonist has a way to level up their skills and get better as the series progresses. A lot of the literary RPGs that I'm interested in or have read have been of the questy adventure nature. These incorporate stories where the characters need to focus on building, crafting, or upskilling in order to remain alive within their adventure or quests. The easiest example of this is going to be something like Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's Dragonlance series, where we have a group of people who are going out on quests in a Dungeons and Dragons-like setting. There are a number of different types of literary RPG, and I guess the most common that I've seen has been a sort of dungeon crawler situation where you've got people going through dungeons to try and get something like a relic or an artifact, or to beat a particular boss, and to do that they will need to use some of those gaming elements to be able to complete that task. That is essentially what a literary RPG is. Most of the time they fit inside that SFF sphere fairly comfortably. Maybe you've read some and you haven't realized that that is what they would be classified as. Maybe you know what a literary RPG is and you absolutely love them. There are 10 literary RPG series that are currently on my radar, and I would like to get to at some point in the near future, whether that be in the next 12 months or the next 50 years. I'm not sure, but these are definitely ones that I want to check out. And if there are any here that I haven't mentioned that you think I'd like, please let me know in the comments down below. This is a subgenre of fantasy and sci-fi that I would love to explore more of. Going through my 10 that I'm interested in very quickly, we will start off with the Ironclasts series by Mike Schell. This is a 3-book series, or a trilogy, I guess I should say, starting with Aching God. This is a literary RPG that has been on my radar for a long time and a priority read for me going into 2023. Blurb for Book 1, Aching God says, "Closer, mortal, you are here, finally, to feed the aching god. The days of adventure are past for Ulrich Manto. Retired to the countryside and isolated with his scars and riches, he no longer delves into forbidden ruins seeking dark wisdom and treasure. But just as old nightmares begin plaguing his sleep, he receives an urgent summons back to that old life. To save his only daughter, he must return to the place of his greatest trauma, the haunted Barrowlands. Along with a group of inexperienced companions and an old soldier, he must confront the dangers of the ancient and wicked Dajo civilization. He has survived fell beasts, insidious traps, and deadly hazards before. but how can he contend with the malice of a bloodthirsty living god? The next one on my radar is Dungeon Crawler Carl. This is a fairly well-loved series in the literary RPG or game literature sphere of the subgenre, and it does not take itself too seriously. This, I believe, is one of those where we've got a dungeon crawler, but it is also a world within a world that we are following along with. So this is a 5-book series. At current, I believe there are more planned within this series, and the first book, Dungeon Crawler Carl, says, "The apocalypse will be televised. A man, his ex-girlfriend's cat, a sadistic game show unlike anything in the universe, a dungeon crawl where survival depends on killing your prey in the most entertaining way possible. In a flash, every human erected construction on Earth, from Buckingham Palace to the tiniest of sheds, collapses in a heap, sinking into the ground. The buildings and all the people inside have been atomized and transformed into the dungeon, an 18-level labyrinth filled with traps, monsters, and loot. A dungeon so enormous it circles the entire globe. Only a few dare to venture inside, but once you're in, you can't get out. And what's worse, each level has a time limit. You have but days to find a staircase to the next level down, or it's game over. In this game, it's not about your strength or dexterity, it's about your followers, your views, your clout. It's about building an audience and killing those goblins with style. You can't just survive here, you've got to survive big." There's a bit more in there, but this video will be very, very long if I read all of these blurbs out in its entirety. So like I said, does not take itself too seriously. It sounds like a really good time. I've heard the audio of these books are excellent, and it is definitely on my radar. The next one on my list is Dungeon Lord. This is by Hugh Hueser, I think is how you pronounce it, and it starts with a Wraith's Haunt as book 1, currently a 4-book series. This one says, "Dark forces have extended Edward Wright an offer of incredible power at a terrible cost, and Edward has chosen to make them regret it. When Edward is swept off into the world of Ivalis as a dungeon lord, the Dark's most powerful servant, he has no servitude in mind. He'll oppose the evil plans of the Dark God Murmur, whatever it takes. Through only his wits and his guts to help him survive a weakened arrival, Edward must rise to power if he is to earn the right to live another day. But in the battle between dark and light, what can Edward choose if both sides are cruel, uncaring monsters? Cold gods laugh in the distant world of Ivalis. Heroes chase after power and experience, while kings send their armies to their deaths in the name of the dark and the light. But no one expects the rise of the Dungeon Lord, and in the world of Ivalis, maybe a single man can forge his own path." This one is another one of those sort of dungeon crawler questy literary RPGs, and that is what I enjoy. The next one that I have on my radar is a series that has a whopping 16 books already in this world, and this is Dragonheart by Kirill Klavansky, starting with Stone Will. There is something intimidating about a literary RPG that already has so many entries in it, but then you think of something like The Forgotten Realms, which has hundreds of entries in that series, so maybe 16 books isn't so bad after all. This one starts with book 1, Stone Will, and it says, "He was born anew in a world where martial arts were indistinguishable from magic. He only received a neuront and a meaningless desires from his past life. What lies ahead? He dreamed of adventure and freedom, but those dreams were taken away from him, the same way his mother, father, and sister had been taken away. They took the kingdom, they took his own destiny, but he is willing to wage a war against the whole world, if need be, to bring everything back. Even if the army opposes him, his sword won't waver. Even if the emperor sends his legions, his step won't falter. Even if demons and gods, heroes and enemies alike are to unite against him, he will not bend to their will. His own will is iron itself. His name is Hajar, and he heeds the call of the dragon heart within him." The next one is another series that has quite a few entries in it. I believe book 7 just came out, and this is The Wandering Inn by Pirate Abba is the name on the picture of the book. This is more of a cozy literary RPG, and each book is a tome. Each book is around 1,000 to 1,300 pages and about 40 to 45 hours of listening time. That is for one book for a cozy literary RPG, and that is what drew me to it. I want to know what sort of cozy literary RPG has that much talk time and reading time in it. What happens in this book? That is what grabbed me. The first one is just the Wandering Inn book 1, and it says, "An inn is a place to rest, a place to talk and share stories, a place to find adventure, or a starting ground for quests and legends." That's where the literary RPG part ties in. A lot of these have a place where quests are bought and sold. It is in this world, at least to Erin Solstice, an inn seems like a medieval relic from the past. But here she is, running from goblins and trying to survive in a world full of monsters and magic. She'd be more excited about all of this if everything wasn't trying to kill her. That's fair enough. But an inn is what she found, so that is what she becomes. An innkeeper who serves drinks to heroes and monsters. Actually, mostly monsters, but it's a living, right? I can see this being a really fun and addictive read, which is, I guess, why there are 7 volumes of this series out that are so long. Each volume is so long. So I do have this one on both ebook and audio, and I will get to it at some point. I actually think I might be listening to this one on the drive to Perth. That will keep me entertained. It's a 46-hour drive, so 43 hours? Maybe, we'll see. We then have a more recent literary RPG to come onto the scene, and that is the Ripple system, starting with Shadeslinger by Kyle Kieran, I believe his name is. Yes, I got that right. I'm not gonna lie, this one was a cover pick because I saw this cover and I was like, whatever that is, don't care, want to read it. And then it happened to be a literary RPG, so I could put it on this list, which was delightful. This one starts with Shadeslinger, like I said, and it says, corporate flameout Ned Altimer dreams of leaving his world behind. So when Earthblood Online splashes into the VRMMO scene, virtual reality, massive multiplayer online scene, he dives in and never looks back. This is one where we have a game within a world. His advantages are twofold: exclusive access to the game's 3-day head start period, and a ridiculously handsome talking axe named Frank, who has knowledge of the game's deepest secrets, if the magnificent Frank ever feels like sharing them. A talking axe. Interesting. But those advantages also make Ned a target. Once the head start period ends, his fellow players will stop at nothing to rip that suave, violent, yet disarmingly charismatic axe right out of his hands. In 72 hours, the greatest manhunt of gaming history is set to begin. Does that not sound awesome? So, this is one that is definitely on my radar. A lot of these are also on Kindle Unlimited as well. If anyone out there has Kindle Unlimited, you can read these for your monthly subscription. The next one that I have on my radar is another one with a few books already in the series. This is Underverse by Jez Cargio, and it already has 7 books in the series. This one starts with Brightblade, and the cover looks terrifying. We have some horror elements in here, and a lot of these books will have those monster elements which will give you that horror rush as well. This one says, a realm aside from our own is the center of realities, home to every spectrum of magic. From the beautiful to the terrible, it was all held in a delicate balance by the eternal emperor and his children. For 10,000 years the empire was the bastion that protected the sentient races from the darkness, but revolution changed all that. Jax is a pretty regular guy. He has a job he tolerates, a girl he kinda sorta loves, and he fights creatures from the Underverse in his sleep, leaving him covered in horrific scars when he wakes up. When his brother vanishes and 5 years later he's kidnapped as well, he's given a stark choice by his arsehat of a father. Go to the Underverse in reality, travel to the capital of that ruined realm at the center of reality, and open a portal for the noble houses to return home. Or die. Slowly. That's the good news. The bad news is he has to survive the arena first to prove his right to go. 12 will enter and only 1 can leave. So if you like a competition, this one sounds like it could be up your alley. Then we have one narrated by the one, the only Travis Baldree, and this is Divine Apostary by A.F. 40k, starting with Shade's First Rule. All of the covers on these books are absolutely stunning, and we do have a adventure literary RPG on our hands. The first book is Shade's First Rule, like I said, and that one says, it's Ruin's Ascension Day, and he finally dies for the first time. His newly revived body can learn spells and abilities for the class given to him by the goddess Uru, and dying is no longer permanent. Sick. Ruin's high intelligence makes becoming a mage inevitable. With his new powers, he will locate his parents and clear his family's name. But nothing goes as Ruin imagined, and when a rival god tries to kill Ruin shortly after his disastrous ascension, his focus turns from his future to just surviving. His choices place him in the middle of an ancient war, and he must overcome the limitations of his unexpected class to reach level 5. So we have a leveling up element. Only then will he have the tools needed to survive. By dying now comes with a terrible penalty, and failing Uru might not only cost him his life and his loved ones, but the entire world. It turns out dying on your Ascension Day is the easy part. The next one I have talked about in a previous book haul, and I won't go into too much detail. I feel like this one has done the rounds here on BookTube for a little while, and that is Stormweaver book number 1, called The Iron Prince, and this is by Bryce O'Connor. Reedon Ward will become a god. He doesn't know it yet, of course. Reedon was born weak, sickly, and small, afflicted with a painful disease and abandoned by his parents because of it. He has had to fight tooth and nail for every minor advantage that life has allowed him. I believe this is a progression fantasy / maybe even progression sci-fi. Let's double check that while we're on the page. Science fiction, so we're looking at sci-fi with a leveling up aspect for that one as well. Now, the last one that I have here is a literary RPG series that has been long-standing for a long time, and the one I'm interested in particular is a sub-series of the original series, and that is the Systems Apocolypse Australia by Tao Wong and KT Hanna. This one currently has 3 books in it, but there is another larger series called Systems Apocolypse by Tao Wong, and that is the original series, which currently has 12 books in it. I'm specifically interested in the Australia part of it because I think that setting a literary RPG in Australia is ridiculous, but also could be a lot of fun. Because this one is close to my heart and the title is Town Under, which I think is also ridiculous and fun, I want to give this one a go, and I do own it in e and audio copies, so we'll see when we get to it. But this one says, what's worse than Australian wildlife? Mutated Australian wildlife. The System Apocolypse has come to Australia, altering native organisms and importing even more menacing creatures to the most dangerous continent on Earth. For Kira Kent, plant biologist, the system arrives while she's pulling an all-nighter at work with her pair of kids in tow. Now, instead of mundane parental concerns like childcare and paying the bills, she's got to figure out how to survive a world where already deadly flora and fauna have grown even more perilous, all while dealing with the minutiae, I don't know if I pronounced that word correctly, of the system's pesky blue screens and levels, and somehow putting together a community of survivors to forge a safe zone and shelter her son and daughter. It almost makes her miss the PTA fundraising sales. Almost. I don't know. I do not know what to expect with this. All I know is that it is snake season in Australia right now, and like we all have to keep our pets inside because the red belly blacks and the eastern browns are out, so maybe having some mutated plants to add into the scene could be fun to listen to at this time. So those are the literary RPG books on my radar. Should there be any more, let me know in the comments down below. What do you think of this genre? Are there any that you have read that you've really liked? Again, let me know. If you like this type of content, give it one of these. If you want to see more of it, click subscribe at your will, and I'll catch you in the next video. Ciao.